Hey, well, hello there, our fellow automotive enthusiast friend, tuning in from somewhere on the great blue marble we call Earth. You stumbled across us once again. You stumbled across another...
Kevin, a demiurgic episode of V8 Radio.
Demiurgic?
Demiurgic.
I think I knew a kid with the last name of Demiurgic.
Did you? I think I knew a kid that had that affliction.
Demiurgic-itis?
Demiurgia, yeah. He had the itis.
Oh, man, I got half a cough. I had to hit the dump button there. Thanks a lot.
You bet. Sorry about that.
What does demiurgic mean?
It is a powerful creative force or being.
Well, of course. Mm-hmm. Of course that's what this show is. This is a demiurgic episode of the VA Radio Podcast. I'm Kevin Ostie, joined as always by our esteemed co-host, Mr. Mike Q-Ball Clark.
Good to be back, sir. It's been a hot minute.
That's what you said at the start of our last show.
It is, and I have to stop saying that.
Well, it was true.
Mm-hmm.
This is going to be challenging because whenever I laugh, I cough, and I tend to laugh at my own jokes. So I'll be coughing.
It's going to be a heck of an edit this time.
Well, or it's authentic, and you leave it in.
Well, that's true. I could do that.
You know what else gets left in every episode?
I have an idea.
Yeah, a sizzling, exciting automotive trivia question.
Sizzling. I want some bacon now.
That's it, man. We ask these trivia questions in the beginning, and then you at home get to play along, shout your guess out at your device, and then at the end of the episode, we reveal the answers, and the world changes for the better.
Right on.
Have you prepared a trivia question for this episode?
Absolutely, sir. Okay. And I think we've touched upon this subject before, but I'm not sure.
Duryea?
And it's not a Duryea question. I am still holding on to that one. Just when you least expect it, expect it. So, but I think we danced around this one or had part of some of the subject before. So, but here we go. What was the first car to feature an electric starter?
First car with an electric starter.
Yes.
That doesn't just come to mind. I don't just know that.
Well,
the crank 'em ups, the crank 'em ups happened all the way through the teens and into the early 20s, I think. So the first one was obviously earliest. Electric starter. I'm going to say it was a 1914 Cadillac.
Ooh. Sounds very demiurgic.
Sounds cranky.
Yeah. Oh, man. Final answer?
Yeah, that is.
All right.
No need to fuss about with that one.
I love it. Love it. All right, cool. Duly noted.
All right. So recently I've been putting some miles on our 62 Ford, and it made me think of a question for you.
Oh, right on.
What does the XL stand for in a Galaxy 500 XL?
Ooh, that is a phenomenal question.
Phenomenal.
I love it. That could be in the next episode of V8 Radio.
Phenomenal.
Phenomenal. All right, the XL and Galaxy 500 XL.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, extra large is the first thing that comes to mind. Mm-hmm. But it can't be that easy. I'm going to say the XL means extra luxury.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, I'm sticking with that.
All right, I can type that up. Extra luxury. All right. Well, that's your final?
That is my final.
Kind of right to that one, too. That's good.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that is duly noted, and we'll find out at the end of the show.
dig it. Whenever that may be, because we have a lot to cover.
Yeah, we do. It's been a week.
It has been a week. You have been all over creation.
In 1 week, yeah.
Yeah.
So a week ago right now, I was on stage at the Street Machine National event in DuQuoin, Illinois.
Right. Great event.
It was a great event. The Street Machine Nats has gone through a lot of changes over the years. In its heyday, which was like 88, 89, 90, it was like the show. And there was 5,000, 6,000 cars. Anywhere between 60 and 100,000 people would come to town.
Good heavens.
Oh, it was nuts. And people would build cars and unveil them at that event.
Wow.
And it was huge, yeah. And so Matt and Debbie Hay with their Thunderbird and Rick Dobberton with the J2000 Pro Street car, if you remember that, and Scott Sullivan and Rocky Robertson and all those Pro Street guys built cars that were, to be on display. Trepanier, of course.
Right.
And back in those days, you had, in the hot rod, muscle car, I would even say street rod world, you had like four or five magazines maybe, and everybody read them.
Mm-hmm.
So between Hot Rod and Carcraft and, those two primarily, because that company, Peterson Publishing, owned the Street Machine Nats, and it was a Carcraft.
Oh, really?
Branded event, yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yep. So Carcraft had like all the coverage of the event, but the feature cars would appear in Hot Rod and they would appear in other Peterson titles. And then, of course, other photographers from other magazines were there, so Super Chevy and Popular Hot Rodding.
Mm-hmm.
So it was just this gold mine of content, and this is long before the internet and before automotive television and all the rest. It's the only place you could get the goods was in print. So when you control that, you reach a lot of people, and especially when people don't have a lot of choices. You're gonna read this or nothing,
or know nothing.
Right. And as time moved on, the success of this event, spun off some others, and then niches started to happen where, pro touring cars eventually kind of came along, and people wanted to do more at events and not just be a fairground cruiser with sunny shine, weather and hang out kind of thing. And the power tour started, and people were driving across country, and then more magazines showed up, and then pretty soon they all turned into websites, and now it's a disaster. There's content everywhere, and hold on, I'm going to die. Okay, spared you that one. But content created everywhere from every person, so it's really hard to get that type of coverage. And people will argue. They'll say, "Well, yeah, I put out a YouTube video and it got a million views." Well, yeah, you might have, but that was your individual video that didn't necessarily maintain a set of standards of an entire magazine cover to cover.
True. Good point.
So like a Carcraft magazine was written by a handful of people that all knew that they all had, meetings and direction of how they wanted this to look and feel. So the content was, it had continuity. Continuity, yeah.
Nice.
And then the photography standards, you had pro photographers and, all that kind of stuff. Whereas a YouTube video today could be a guy with a phone camera. And sure, that could be awesome, but it's different. So it's much harder to quantify getting the thing in the mail with all of those focused articles as opposed to, and so the other thing is that a magazine, if you think about it, would come to your mailbox and serve you whatever it had.
Correct.
And you read it from cover to cover. We do the opposite today. We jump on Google, we type in what we want to see, and that's all you get.
Yeah, and chances are somebody has that content.
Right, and you might get 25 videos of a car that you want to see, but you're not getting what happened if you turned 5 pages down the magazine.
That's correct, yeah.
And exposed to something that's, almost random that you might not have been interested in until you read that.
Good point. I would see read about a restored or a hot rod car in Hot Rod and turn the page and then see a story about a fuel altered, just burning rubber down and thinking, "Oh, wow, who knew about this thing? This is crazy."
Right, and you certainly didn't get the smell and the movement of the video and all that kind of stuff. Which, granted, that's awesome. That's what I do. I don't mean to sound like I'm bagging on video because that's what I do. But it is different, and you relied on the character of the writers and what they wanted to show you with their photos. But to give you an idea of how powerful this is. A couple of years ago, we were shooting a Muscle Car of the Week episode out at the Brothers Collection, and they own 4 of the 8 known, or the 8 built 69 Trans Am convertibles.
Yep.
And I was looking at one of them, noticing that it was fairly original and blah, blah, blah. And I said, I know I've seen this car before.
Really?
And it was featured in a 1994 issue of Carcraft magazine.
Get out of here.
And I found that issue and brought it back out there, and this is the same car because they printed the VIN in Carcraft, believe it or not.
Really?
Yeah,
that's crazy. That's amazing.
You could do that. Yeah. So anyway, that's the reason that things changed with the Street Machine Nationals, and then another aspect of it was the social side because it used to be a crazy off the hook party. I mean, it was nuts.
Right.
It was cruising and burnouts and lots of partying, and the town, that show's been thrown out of like 5 cities.
Oh my gosh.
It got thrown out of DuQuoin. It came back to DuQuoin. It got thrown out of, it was in Ohio. It was in East St. Louis. It was at Gateway, the racetrack. So it gets out of control and people kind of get sick of it. And that happened. So this time when it came back, I don't know, 6-7 years ago now, the crowd that shows up is a lot of the same people that showed up 30 years ago, but now they're 30 years older.
Right. I just don't have that kind of energy, man.
Exactly. They don't have the stones to drink all night and do burnouts, like crazy. So, and then they have their kids there, which is cool to see for sure.
Yeah, sure.
So, so the whole thing kind of toned down quite a bit. And then there's all these other things you can do. So what you end up with today is still a great show, and it's really the people that believe in it and really like it.
Nice.
A lot of people that are there kind of for that nostalgia. A lot of people that are there bringing new cars. So the attendance was up this year over last year, which was great.
Yes.
And it is the place to see pro street cars in this country. I don't think there's any better location to see those. And Pro Street's a thing, it's over the top. Mm-hmm. These are cars that, it sounds kind of funny today because today you can go buy a 9-second car at a dealer.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
But 35 years ago, you couldn't.
Correct.
And you would build, a muscle car, or what was real popular in the mid 80s was a brand new car, a late model car. So that Pontiac J2000 we were talking about, or Rocky Robertson's Buick LeSabre, and he did a Somerset Regal, and these are all front drive cars that they put a chassis under, and in some cases a stainless chassis, by the way, fully polished.
Holy cow!
Yeah,
well, it is Pro Street,
right? Crazy amounts of work, multiple superchargers, blowers, turbos, stuff sticking out everywhere, wild paint. And it shifted from a car that was supposed to look like a pro stock car driving down the street to a full-on show experience that really, isn't necessarily built to be a competitor on the drag strip.
Right.
But it's a carnival. It's a circus.
It is.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah, I loved, for the first time I ever saw a pro street car in the Hot Rod magazine, I was really just taken by the whole thing, and just at how outrageous it was. And the fact that it was street legal really blew my mind.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy stuff.
Still a pretty loose interpretation of street legal.
True. But as long as it has lights and a horn and turn signals and
bumpers. And
a
lot of them got dinged for bumper height. It was too low and that kind of stuff. But yeah, so I mean, that's a lot of fun to see those, and then to see all the rest of the muscle cars and street machines that are there, and the street machine definition is changing. And in fact, so I had actually found an article that was printed in Hot Rod magazine in the January 1996 issue, in which our friend Jeff Smith, who was editor, and our friend, the late, great Gray Baskerville, who was feature editor, had a debate about the difference between street machines, hot rods, street rods.
Okay.
And whatnot. And it's really, really cool. And it was surprising to hear this, the way they did it. I'm gonna read a couple of lines out of this. So Jeff Smith says they're talking about what is a street machine, and Baskerville says, hot rods don't have fenders. Street rods are mostly 48 and earlier cars, and then muscle cars are later, and street machines are kind of after that, so like 49 and up through the 60s and 70s with, whatever mods. And Smith said a street machine is usually based on a car built from 49 all the way up to today. It used to be most of the street machiners use 60s cars, but we're seeing more 50s cars, or as Gray called them, nifty 50s cars, because the 50s cars are plentiful and for the most part inexpensive.
Oh boy.
Yeah, that throws back to 1996 because they're not now.
Right.
So basically any car from today on back to 49 with an owner modification, whether a stereo, wheels and tires, or a full-on pro street chassis, is a street machine. And Baskerville says, well, that's just it. Any car can be a street machine, so there isn't as much originality as with hot rods. A street rod, especially a roadster, is very different from anything you'll see on the road, and open cars are tons of fun, and that's why everyone should own a roadster like mine. and Gray has a very famous 32 Ford that he drove as a daily for years.
Wow.
Smith says, well, with open cars, you get bugs in your hair and teeth. And what good is a roadster when you can't take a girl for a ride because girls don't like bugs in their hair? Baskerville says, what do you mean? Everyone loves roadsters. People riding in roadsters get bugs in their teeth because they're smiling. So it's this really great story that kind of goes back and forth and provided a lot of color commentary on that whole scene at the time. Today, street machines could be a front drive import.
Yeah, it sure could be. It
could be a truck.
Yeah, the definition is really broadened out quite a bit, especially with the variety of cars available to us today as opposed to the 80s.
Yep, for sure. So it was a neat event because it had all those types of cars, and they were promoting the pro street side quite a bit just because it is a special thing. But now they're focusing on all the other rest of the cars too. So the other people that come out and they'll have a whole bunch of friends and they'll bring whatever they got. They'll bring muscle cars and it's parked next to a fendered street rod and it's parked next to a tricked out pickup truck, and everybody's just there to have a good time. So that was pretty cool. So last Sunday night, I actually drove the Galaxy to that event, and
yeah, you did. You sure did.
Yeah, it was pretty neat because I parked it right next to the stage, not to call any attention to it, but that's where I was working, so that was my parking spot.
Right on.
And all these people come up and they're taking pictures of the car and everything, and this is not a show car, and it's not a car I've ever entered into any type of event like that ever.
But it's a nice car.
Well, I mean, I'm not going to say it's not, but I just don't see it that way. I see it, for me, the enjoyment is driving it and working on it and whatnot.
But of every imperfection in that car. You're way too close to the project. Whereas somebody just walking up to it sees it and says, holy cow, this is a beautiful car.
Well, and I appreciate that. And I'm not trying to bag on the car or anything or point the flaws out. But in my mind, if I'm taking a show car to a show, it's going to be a nice freaking car.
I hear you.
Our crew has built some cars that have scored. They've missed 5 points out of 1,000 at the Muscle Car and Corvette Nationals. That is a nice car. This is not that.
You're so spoiled. Oh my gosh.
Well, I guess so. But that's not my bag because I don't own one of those cars.
Yeah.
I just go out and drive this thing when I can, and it's got its value because of, the connection to my dad bought this car, and that's what I like out of it. And if I ever went through and restored it and gapped it perfectly and all the rest, and then I would display it properly and be detailing it and have a signboard and be telling the story. But in this case, I just basically drove up and parked it and got out and did my thing. So that was Friday, and Saturday, I cleaned it up because I realized that it was June 25th of 2022, which was 60 years to the day when this car rolled off the Los Angeles assembly plant in California.
Holy cow. Happy birthday, Galaxy.
Yes, to the day. And what better place to have a birthday party for a car than at the Street Machine Nationals?
Outstanding. There is no better place.
So it was pretty cool because I actually said that on stage. I was doing announcements and playing music and, kind of doing the DJ thing, and mentioned that little story. And people were coming up and wishing happy birthday. And
That's awesome. Right on.
Because if anybody's going to get it, it's that crowd.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So after the Street Nats, I had to literally a couple hours later, we finished the award ceremony, and I jumped in the car, came home, and Kelly took me to the airport because I had a trip to California. I flew to Ontario, California, and then rented a car first thing in the morning and drove up to Mojave to go see Gene Winfield.
Hey, our good friend Gene Winfield.
Yes, and Gene is a 2022 inductee into the SEMA Hall of Fame, and this year for the Hall of Fame awards gala, I'm doing some work for that. I'm writing the script and hosting the event, but they're going to do some videos that night, a little interview type video with each of the winners. So the video crew and myself went out there to shoot an interview with Gene, and then also with Walker Evans, and then the third one was Mr. Jack Roush. So Gene and Evans are both in California, so flew out there. Gene's 95th birthday, I think, is the same day as my Galaxy. I think it's June 25th.
Really? No kidding.
And he's doing great.
He's not slowing down a bit.
No, and in fact, his motto these days is, "I'm just getting started."
Oh my gosh. That's a heck of a warm-up, I'll tell you what.
Yeah. And so for these Hall of Fame video interviews and stories, this is really about the person and not necessarily about, I guess it's about what they've done, but there's enough different places to get biographical information on Gene Winfield. And
right.
What we were really going for is something that people didn't know.
Gotcha.
And something about that person that made them, that drove them to do what they do, that maybe the rest of us schlubs can learn from.
Right on.
Hopefully it wears off on some of us. So Gene's got this great philosophy, so his life is just full of like really major accomplishments. He started racing cars in the 40s, racing hot rods, and he would go to the dry lakes at El Mirage and race. And there's this famous story where he had I think this is in 49, he had a 49 Mercury that was his tow car. And on the trailer was this, like a 27 Ford, like a track T kind of thing. And Gene taught himself on to build engines because he just tore them down and looked at them and figured them out. And he learned how to port relieve flatheads and learned about what camshafts do, and had Iski make cams for him. And his goal was to go 110 miles an hour, and in those days that was saying something. So by 1949, he'd been doing this for 4 or 5 years, and he's got his Merc and he's got his Roadster on the trailer, and he drives out to El Mirage, and he takes the race car off the trailer, and he first runs it in a Lakester class, which doesn't have fenders, but it's a coupe, and he sets a record, right?
Nice.
So then he comes back and he pulls the roof off, and makes it a roadster, and he runs it again and sets another record in the roadster class.
That's awesome.
So then he comes back, and he literally takes the rest of the body off, and it's got this rudimentary cage on it, and runs it again in the modified class and sets a record there. And then he unhitches the trailer, and he runs the Mercury and wins a record in that in a stock production car class. So he got 4 records in basically a day and a half at one event.
Good Lord.
And they changed the rules.
Oh, I bet.
Can't do that anymore. It's 1 record per car per event.
Okay. Well, clearly he had a 3/8 by 3/8 flathead.
Oh, for sure.
Car. All day.
Yeah.
All day, babe.
I think it might have been a Cadillac flathead. And like the Streamliner guys today, like the Speed Demon guys, they can change the engine completely and enter the car into a different class and do that. But I don't think it's allowed to turn the Streamliner into a dump truck or something.
A motorcycle or something.
Yeah, right.
Right.
You go run that.
Yeah, for sure. That'd be a heck of a display if they did.
Yeah, so Gene was doing all that stuff and then taught himself everything. And I said, back in those days, this is before Hot Rod Magazine even started.
Yeah.
And he said, oh, yeah. He said, I remember when Bob Peterson came out to me and sold me the first copy of Hot Rod Magazine in 1948. He said, I knew Red Schlemmer, who owned the car that's on the cover, and I knew Eddie Hulse, who drove the car that's on the cover.
Oh,
and it was taken out at El Mirage, the picture. And Winfield liked the magazine so much he became a dealer. So he would buy 3 or 4 copies and then sell them to his friends, which helped launch the Peterson publishing empire. And at the same time, Peterson says to Winfield, well, you're doing a lot of neat stuff. Why don't you write some stories? So Windy was writing articles for that magazine from, 49, 50, 51, all way back.
Unreal.
And I'm sitting here talking to the guy.
Yes. And he's still breathing. That's amazing.
That's the amazing thing is it's a total time warp back to a guy who was there. And, you pick up an old magazine, you look at the old pictures and go, oh, wow, that's cool. But then when the guy's like, oh, yeah, that guy, he did this and this and this. And you're like, how do you know? Well, I'm in the picture. I'm there.
Yeah, I'm the guy.
Right. It's awe-inspiring. So after he did a lot of racing and then he was building cars and doing metalwork and chopping tops. And he chopped his first top when he was 15 years old. And he's still doing that today.
Still chopping.
Teaching people to chop tops and do metalwork and channel and section and nose and deck and French and, you name it, all that custom stuff. And taught himself how to paint, taught himself how to weld, taught himself how to shape and form metal. And so I said, all right, so you're looking at something. What is it that makes you say, I'm going to try this? Or because there was no reference material.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, well, I would just look at it. And if I wanted to do it, I would just start doing it. And I approached everything with a mentality that I can do this. I can do anything. I just got to figure out how. So he would tear engines apart and look at them and put them together, and they might blow up. But then he would do it again and learn from his mistakes and keep going. So he said there's never been a challenge that was laid down in front of him that he didn't master eventually. And that's where his satisfaction comes from, is when the thing's finished, you step back and go, yeah, not only did I do that, but I had to figure out how to do that.
Yeah.
And then I did it, and it looks great. And I said, so how do you know when something's finished? And he said, when it looks cool.
That's a perfect hot rodder answer. I love it.
He said, I just keep going until I like it. And if it looks cool, I like it. And there you go.
Now, for those who may not remember, this is the same Gene Winfield who a couple of years ago was overseas, fell and broke his hip, and had to be flown back to the States to heal up. And a couple of weeks later, he was back at it?
Yeah, he was at the SEMA show.
Yeah.
Walking around. And I saw him when I was...
I was there. I saw it.
Yes, the SEMA Central stage,
Yeah.
and I see him, and I'm like, "Oh my God, you made it back from Finland,
Finland, right?
with your broken hip." And he said, "Yeah, well, I wouldn't miss the SEMA show for anything."
Nice.
And I said, "You got time for a quick interview?" And he jumped up on stage and sat on a bar stool for crying out loud. And I'm like, "Do we need to get you a, like a geriatric bed or something?" I didn't know what the hell.
Need a walker?
Nope. Not this guy.
No, man.
So it was kind of funny because I first met Gene in the late 90s, and I'm not going to suggest by any stretch that we're, buddies that hang out all the time, but we certainly, know who each other are for sure. Mm-hmm. And I knew a few things about him that this video crew had no idea. So the one question that I thought was kind of fun is I said, "Well, Gene, why don't you tell us about your caffeine, cigarette, alcohol, and drug addictions?" And I hear this collective gasp from the two cameramen and the director.
Right.
And Gene goes, "Never had any one of them."
Right on. That's insane.
He's never had a sip of coffee, never had a cigarette, never drank alcohol, never did any drugs. And that's probably why he's 95 and still doing this stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
But he said his brother used to drink alcohol and get all boozed up and it'd fall down and didn't get anything done the next day. And he's like, "I don't want to do that. I want to get something done."
What amazes me the most is that he's never smoked a cigarette. Back in a time when cigarettes were considered healthy by your doctor.
Yeah, right.
Hey, it'll calm your nerves. Have a Chesterfield. It'll be good for you.
Yeah, if you believe the advertisements.
Yeah. So the fact that he never got into that really amazes me because that's a rarity.
Well, he did say he probably made up for it by sucking lacquer fumes all those years.
Yeah, well, there's that.
But he said as soon as they became available, he wore a mask. They just didn't know.
Right.
They didn't know back then. So his golden nugget of advice was to give it a try, to do it, and to get it done. See it through and get it done. And that's awesome.
That is great advice.
And especially, I know it's very simplified, but whatever your problem is that you're working on, it doesn't matter. Obviously we're not just talking about car stuff, but if it's something at work, whatever, if you have that mentality like, yeah, this might suck. I might have to do this a bunch of times, but I'm going to be sharp about it. I'm going to learn from every mistake, and that's going to push me over the edge. And pretty soon I'll be able to step back and go, "Yep, did it." That's
Perfect.
Powerful. Yeah.
That is powerful. Absolutely. I have a hard time with that. And I know people who don't. And I watch them with such awe when I see somebody just dig into something and do something that scares the jeepers out of me because I don't know what I'm doing. And I know in my heart of hearts, I'm going to just ruin the whole damn thing. So,
I get it.
And I don't want to ruin it, but I want to know how to do stuff. And that's a paradox in my head all the time.
Well, so. He was saying that one day he was out in front of a bowling alley or a pool hall or something. He was pretty young. And this guy got into a roadster and took off. And Gene was in awe of the sound of the car going up through the gears, and this guy was speed shifting and banging gears. And he just loved the sound of that and could envision himself, just cruising through the gears and tacking the engine up. And
yeah.
So he said, "I want to learn that," right? So he said he blew up 3 engines and 4 transmissions and 2 rear ends learning how to speed shift, but he can still do it today.
Right on. That's great.
And my fear is like, I don't have all the resources in the world. If I blow up an engine, it's a setback.
Yeah. Oh, believe me, I know what you're talking about.
So I really think the root of a lot of my fears for getting into something is that I won't be able to get it done because of time. I'll have to do something that's more important or whatever, and then this thing will be apart forever, and then nobody likes it. And the other thing is that I can't afford it. I'm going to get backed into a corner. I'm going to break something, and I financially won't be able to pull the resources together to pull it off. But guys like Winfield demonstrate that, hot rodders make stuff happen. And maybe it's a compromise. Maybe I take this Galaxy out and I learn how to speed. Well, it's an automatic, but learn how to speed shift. Right. And I blow up the 351. Maybe for a little while I got to put a junkyard 302 in it to drive it. But eventually I'll put a good motor together again. it just takes work. It's just
True. It's a good point.
sticking to the grind. So it was, and again, that was my mission, was to try to get something that I could take home and go, damn, if I could do this, the world would be almost as better of a place as our trivia questions make it.
Nice.
So our next visit was to go see Walker Evans from Walker Evans Racing and Shock Absorbers and Wheels. And I didn't know Walker, never met him. But this guy is a 9-time Baja 1000 champion.
Unbelievable.
He is one of the winningest off-road racers ever. He raced with Parnelli Jones and he had cars built by Strop and trucks. And he's the first guy ever to win the Baja 1000 overall in a pickup truck.
No kidding.
His pickup truck beat all the buggies, beat all the motorcycles, beat everything out there, won it in a pickup truck. And
that's insane.
It is insane. And his truck was not that crazy. It was a Baja equipped truck, but it wasn't like a purpose built buggy, or
right.
So his story is so great because he raced and raced and raced and he started he said the Mint 400 was a particularly challenging race. It's a 400-mile race, and it's basically a couple of laps. And after you finish the first lap, you're 200 miles down, And they would take the truck off the track and pit. And at that point, this is 1975, and it was a 74-bodied Chevy pickup truck. And they had 4 shock absorbers on each corner. And
really? Wow. Cool.
That's what it took, to keep this thing on track, right? So halfway through the race, he would pit, and like 80% of his shocks are dripping, and they're leaking all the fluid, and they're all blown out, and the tires and wheels are shot. So the second half of the race is a free-for-all because you can't control the truck. And so the first thing he did is he developed a quick-release pin system to where you could take that bank of 4 shocks out at once.
Nice.
And put another set in, and then you'd have a new suspension for the second half of the race. But then he realized this is nonsense, because now he's like, 4, 8, 12, 6, that's 32 shock absorbers per race that you're basically destroying.
Oh, right, yeah.
So he went to a machinist friend and he said, look, can you build me a shock absorber that I can unscrew the ends and change the fluid and rebuild? Yeah, I think I can make you something on the Bridgeport and on the lathe, And can you also make it, from 1.5 inches diameter to like maybe 3.5 inches around, so it holds more fluid and it's more responsive?
Yeah.
And yeah, I could do that. So he gets these things prototyped. He got 1 shock on each corner.
Wow.
When he won the next race by like an hour and a half.
Holy cats.
So once that happened, everybody wants to know what shocks Walker's running.
Those shocks, yeah.
So that kind of kicked off his manufacturing business. And he figured out a way to hook up with the right people and start making shock absorbers. And his ace in the hole was that he was a fantastic racer, and people trusted him. They saw you're winning with this.
Yeah.
I want to win with this. So I think today they're doing 5,800 shocks a week or something.
Holy wow.
Whiz. Yeah. Walker Evans is like top line stuff. And they never stopped innovating. And he's had OE contracts with Chevrolet and with Dodge to run, those vehicles and factory sponsorships. And he had he's a character. He had a couple of really great lines. He said, Detroit doesn't answer the phone unless you're winning.
He's not wrong.
Yeah. But again, I tried to kind of pry into his head a little bit. And I said, how do you win races? What do you do? And in his case, Baja 1000, they would go 2 and 3 weeks ahead of time and start pre-running. And he said, we would learn that course like the back of our hand. We would learn everything about it. And they would develop shortcuts, because in the Baja 1000, there's no route. You just got to get to the end. And however you get there generally is okay. So they would identify these little shortcuts, through some trees and, off the beaten path, if you will.
All right.
And if it turned out that it saved them time, they would go back and they would tie toilet paper in the tree for a visual cue, right?
Nice.
And then they would rake over all the tracks, so it's like they were never there.
Oh.
So nobody would have the visual indicator to go, oh, maybe I'll go that way. This is all fresh sand and dirt. So he was sharp about it. And he said, so that's the one thing is you got to prepare. You got to be ahead of the game. But the other thing he said is, in racing in particular, you look at the car and you start with the slowest thing on the car and make it faster.
I like that. Makes total sense. Yeah.
So apply that to a business. And now all of a sudden, we always think, a car, I'm going to put more power in this thing. I want to put a bigger engine. Maybe you need to start at the other end and make sure the suspension can manage all that power, your differential, your tires, your suspension, and work up to that. And then you'll get the most out of that engine without even adding to the engine.
True. Very good. Yeah. Great idea.
Brilliant.
Yeah. You need the foundation.
You need the foundation. And then when you get everything, and the cool thing is that never ends, because eventually you'll make everything faster. Something's still the slowest. So you start over, and keep working on that.
That's pretty cool. That's a great way to think about things.
So I told our crew in our shop meeting yesterday, our monthly meeting, that story, and they all want that. We're going to print that on the wall in the shop.
Really?
Yes.
Awesome.
It is awesome. Just a hell of a guy, great insight, and super cool experience. So after that, I was in California, I don't know, not even 24 hours, jumped on a plane, flew home, got home at, 8 or 9 at night, went to the shop for a couple hours, got some paperwork done, got up at 4 the next morning, and flew to Detroit to go interview Jack Roush. And that dude, man, that man is on a whole nother level.
Is he?
Yeah. There's so most people know Jack Roush from NASCAR, he owns Roush Performance, and there's Roush Yates Engines, then there's the Mark Martin driven NASCAR team. And they're very successful, but it goes way back, and he was a drag racer in the late 60s and ended up working for Ford. And he said one of the great things that propelled him forward is he hung out with a group called the Fastbacks, and it was a drag racing team of guys that would race after hours and on weekends. And they all worked at Ford or wherever, but one of the guys was a lawyer. One of the guys was a nuclear physicist.
Oh, whoa.
Another guy's an engineer. Another guy, was a plant manager or whatever. So the couple years he spent racing with those guys, he got to learn from all of their collective experiences as well, right? So he's applying things to the race program and to how to run businesses and everything else. And he was good. He was building engines for everybody, for all the top racers, Boss 429 engines, and Jack Roush is an amazing engine builder.
Sure.
Building offshore engines and building road race stuff. And eventually in the 80s, he got backed by Ford to do some road racing with the new Fox Mustang platform. And then later on, eventually got into the NASCAR stuff. This is the story that I had no idea. And I'm upset that I didn't know it, which either means I'm an idiot or it's not that well publicized. And I have to think it's not that well publicized. But Roush said that there was a couple occasions in his career where he bet the company. He basically put it all on the line to get a project done, right? And one of the best examples was in the early 90s. So if we set the Wayback Machine to 1979 and the Ford Mustang comes out, the new Mustang for 79.
Oh, yeah, the Fox,
the Fox body, right? So that Fox platform was pretty versatile because it was not only the Mustang, but it was the Fairmont, It was the Mercury Marquis. It was the Zephyr. It was the Mark 7. It was even done as a Lincoln. The Continental was based on the Fox platform, and the station wagons and the Mercury Capri. And I mean, they wrung everything they could out of this platform. So by the end of the 80s, it was aging, and it was time to move on.
Mm-hmm.
So Ford gets this great idea to pair up with Mazda, and they're going to bring out the next generation of car, and they build it, and now we're talking like 91, and Ford shows this car to some of the top dealers, and I had learned from Roush that the top dealers have a lot of influence at Ford, and I don't know if it's the same at GM, and I imagine it is, but they would get these people together and say, this is our offering that's coming out soon, do you think you can sell this? And the dealers all looked at this Ford Mazda product and said, are you effing kidding me?
Really?
It's front-wheel drive.
Ooh, man.
No Mustang is front-wheel drive.
Oh, that was that. Okay.
And all Ford's like, oh, well, wait a minute. We kind of think front-wheel drive is the wave of the future here. And they said, we don't care. It's going to die. So Ford had a ton of money invested in this project, so they weren't going to scrap it. So they conveniently call that the new Ford Probe.
Probe.
Yes.
Yes.
And their second lesson was that no female wants to buy a car called a Probe.
Oh, that's brilliant.
Yeah. And I'm sorry. Please pardon my cough, but it's going to happen.
Yeah.
So, meanwhile, they don't have a plan B. They don't have a new Mustang. They're aging out this Fox platform. They've got the Probe.
Right.
They don't have a car. So Ford comes to Roush, and they say, "All right, Jack, it takes Ford 50 months to bring a car to the street from an idea. We don't have 50 months. This thing's supposed to debut for 94, and it's like 91.
Whoa.
Can you build us a new Mustang?" And Jack says, well, let me think about that, right? So he goes to his team and he says, all right, here's the deal. Ford wants to hire us to completely develop, engineer, test, crash, salt spray, performance test, the entire platform, the whole car. They want to outsource basically the entire car to us. And they want it done in 30 months.
Whoa.
What do you say? And the team, they didn't know if they could do it.
Right.
They have, Roush had serious resources because he was an OE supplier and making, lots of different stuff. But that's a tall order, man. And the team said, you know what? Let's do it. So Jack said, you're on. So 29 months later, here comes the SN95 platform, which is the 94 Mustang.
Yeah. Holy cats.
Completely done by Roush. I did not know that.
I didn't know that either.
So Roush, the ramifications there are, if he didn't get this done, he was done.
Well,
it would have taken all of their resources with no payoff, and it could have completely bankrupted the company. The next thing is, if they built a car that they finished, but Ford couldn't sell, they were done.
A lot on the line.
The third one, and to me the biggest one, is these guys are single-handedly tasked with advancing the American icon.
Yeah, man.
The most iconic car this country's ever produced, and now Jack and his team get to do it.
No pressure, Jack.
Right. And they did it. Yeah.
Sure did.
So when the whole thing's finished and dust is settled, there's a handful of these prototype cars laying around at his facility in the back parking lots, and the Ford guys come by and they say, hey, we need to pick up and crush all those test vehicles so they don't get out on the streets. And Jack says, over there in the corner there's a black one. Is it cool if I hold on to that? Just as a thing,
Mm-hmm.
I guess so. So they take this particular car, which had over 100,000 miles of testing on it. And
wow.
they blow it all apart, and they're looking at the chassis, and they see where like the welds are coming apart, and they re-weld the whole thing, and the corrosion testing had rusted certain parts, so they replaced all that, and they paint it black, and they start putting it back together. And being Jack Roush, they put an air intake on it.
Yeah.
They put better brakes on it. They put a hood on it. They give it, a bit of a tune-up, better suspension, lower it. And that's going to be his personal little hot rod, fun car.
Nice.
Well, Ford has one of those dealer meetings, and they're showing off the new Mustang, and they come to Jack and they said, hey, we need a conversation starter. Can we borrow your little black Mustang? So he said, well, I guess so. So they bring it to this dealer meeting, and these guys are driving the snot out of this car, and they're not going to give it back. So it goes from dealer to dealer to dealer all over the country. And these dealers are ordering this car, and you can't buy this car.
Oh, jeez.
That was the birth of the Roush Mustang.
Aha!
Roush made it so that you could buy that. They part numbered everything, and
did not know that.
I didn't know it either. How awesome of a story is that?
That's a great story, man. I mean, I knew of the Roush Mustang, and I knew that, Roush had the affiliation with Ford, but I had no idea it was that deep.
Exactly. So now the guy that developed that platform is doing the hot rod version.
That's awesome. It should be.
And Steve Saleen was doing cars at the time, and of course it's a throwback to what Shelby was doing back in the day. And Ford was always interested in doing these performance spin-offs, but you can still today you can go buy a Roush Mustang, and different stages with superchargers or mild performance up to whatever you want, and that just makes me feel good.
Yes. That is cool that you can still do that with that cool of a car.
And knowing that that it's not some knucklehead in his backyard that's making parts for it. These are true OE quality spec.
Yes.
Warranted at every dealer in the world. It's really something.
And built by someone who has that kind of passion and not just something that came out of a board meeting. Like, we need the performance thing. Let's throw something in the parts bin and we'll call it this, and we'll let the public buy it. I mean, this makes me want a Mustang. This makes me really dig the Roush Mustang.
Right. This is a guy who knew it all from experience. Every type of racing you can imagine, put his talents to work. This is what he came up with, So that was really amazing. And I asked him, there's a couple of more really great stories. In fact, so he kind of not hand-picked, but personally interviewed the first 100 employees of Roush. They've got over 4,000 today.
Jeez, that's awesome.
And they're in a bunch of industries. But of that initial 100 people, almost all of them were on staff 25 years later.
That's beautiful. I love that.
It's amazing.
Yes.
So how do you do that, right? So his interview process was he would spend a full day, 2 days, whatever it took, with some candidate and show them what they're going to be doing and learn the skill set and all this. And when it came time to sliding the paper across the table with an offer on it, he'd hold off and he would say, okay, listen, I want you to go home. And I want you to think about this. And I want you to come back tomorrow. And if you come back tomorrow with the enthusiasm that you would do this job for free, I'll hire you.
Wow.
So he gets people that are true believers. They're fully bought into what he does. The pay is just not why they're there. Right?
Yeah.
And look what happens.
Wow. That is the kind of loyalty companies are begging for.
Yeah, and they don't know how to do it.
Yeah, they don't know how to do it.
And he said it's fairly simple. You give them cool projects. He said our company does a lot of cool stuff. I mean, they built race cars. So here's the spin-off businesses. They're doing stuff with natural gas and commercial fleet vehicles and whatnot. They're also doing a lot in the defense industry. A lot of contract work that we can't see or talk about or know.
Right.
he makes engine parts for the space shuttle program and for other NASA programs, right? Engine parts. What does that mean? He's got an engine, an internal combustion engine that runs on hydrogen that works in space.
That's trippy. Shut your mouth.
It was part of a generator that recharged batteries on the shuttle program. And he said, we had to figure out how to oil it because there's no gravity.
No gravity.
So he basically looked at, because he's also an aviation enthusiast, he's got a bunch of airplanes, and he looked at these radial planes from the 30s that have exposed push rods and oil system. They just throw mist. It's a loss oil system.
Total loss, yeah.
And that's what they do for these, because they just spray oil on them. And
yeah. That is unreal.
So then he also has Roush Entertainment. They make roller coasters.
No, get out of here.
So he said they've got a huge contract with Disney. They make all these different rides. And he said, believe it or not, Disney is more secretive than the federal government is.
I believe that. I believe that.
The defense jobs, he can talk more about those than he can about Disney roller coasters.
Oh, my gosh. Well, the entertainment industry is pretty cutthroat. You don't want anybody scooping your ride, I guess.
No. So, like anybody else could build that, though, you know.
Right.
So they come in, they take the idea, they design it, they build it, they make sure it works.
Mm-hmm.
And I asked him, I said, so you guys have challenges all day long. That's all you got is challenges.
Mm-hmm.
How do you approach them? And he said, well, we've got basically 12 people at the top that run the whole organization. And when the project comes in, we all discuss it and land on who's the most capable to lead that project. And we'll all point at that guy, and then everybody gets behind him.
That's great. I love that.
Yeah, it's interesting.
That is interesting.
So after that interview, and by the way, we're in the Roush collection at that point, so there's race cars and Mustangs and just stuff everywhere. And his daughter Susan is a very active NMCA drag racer in the Mustang series.
Really?
Yeah, she's really good too. Very fast. And she's the caretaker of the museum collection, if you will. And I'm drooling over this, thinking that this could be like Muscle Car of the Week, Roush Edition.
Roush Edition. Yeah, man.
So we didn't have any time because I flew to Detroit, did this, and came home the same day. But I asked her, I said, is there any possibility I can come back and maybe get a tour? And she's like, yeah, anytime. So
all right.
Who knows?
That's your foot in the door.
Yeah, and it's interesting because it wasn't, I just didn't know. They're very humble, people with a lot of humility.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's our class leading 1976 Pro Stock car.
Well, that's a great opportunity. That's a great opportunity to get a lot of those stories out there through Muscle Car of the Week, because that had a pretty good following, and people need to hear this stuff.
Yeah, the subscribers are still growing on that like crazy. And we haven't done a new video in a while, which sucks, but we will. So that was really unbelievable. And he was such a great guy. And we'd still be talking if they didn't, we didn't have to go and he didn't have something else to do.
Right.
Just loves telling those stories. And
that's amazing. Oh my gosh.
He is a pilot. He's had some pretty famous crashes in his time.
Has he?
The worst one was, I don't remember what kind of plane it was, but he crashed into a river and was unconscious underwater in the airplane. And a retired Marine saw it happen and pulled him out and saved his life.
Whoa.
Yeah. And
there's
a few long-term effects from those injuries. And I guess that Marine also had a couple of problems, but I'm sure he got well taken care of. And Roush, he's in his 80s, I guess, now. So, but just still, you ask him about any one of those projects, and he's got it right there.
That is unbelievable, dude.
It was. So once again, the opportunities afforded to me by my affiliation with our friends at SEMA have allowed me a front row seat with some of the people that have created this industry. And I can't thank them enough for that, because it was just mind-bending. And then I get to the airport and I'm on my way home and I bump into, in the St. Louis market, kind of where we live, one of the top talk show hosts. He's sitting there. So we're all sitting at this bar at this restaurant, and it's one of these bars that's got a high elevated thing, and it's in the middle of the seating area, so people sit on both sides and face each other, and there's a wall with outlets in front of you, so everybody's got their laptops open.
Ah, nice.
And we're all working, and you look across at the other guy, but you're not really paying attention to him, and it's like 10 o'clock at night, and I look to the left and I see these people, 5 or 6 that way, and I look to the right and there's 5 or 6 people that way, and we all got our laptops, we all got a drink, and I couldn't help it, and I kind of sit up straight, and I said, look, here's all of us at 10 o'clock at night, all with our laptops open, we all got a drink, and we're getting stuff done. We're all making it happen. And everyone's like, yes.
Buy that man a drink.
Well, we had this kind of community cheers, people, and I'm looking at the cross section. It is every type of person. There's every gender, color, nationality in this cross section sitting at this bar. We all had the same mission to get something done that night. And
nice.
Turns out the guy sitting right across from me, I identified his voice, and he's a local radio guy. And I went up to him afterwards and I said, hey, I appreciate your show. And he said, oh, you listen? And I said, yeah, when I can. What do you do? I said, well, we restore muscle cars and classics. My dad's got a 73 Scout that he gave me that I need to get back on the road.
God
said,
dang
all
it.
right.
I'm your man. Oh, that's awesome, dude. I love it.
So hopefully we get that project. That'd be really cool. But replaying that in my mind, I was thinking most people come up to that guy looking for an autograph.
Yeah.
My introduction was, hey, let's get to work. So
nose to the grindstone, people.
Yeah, right.
That's amazing. That's cool, man.
Yeah, so that was...
You've had a heck of a week.
That was this week. Yeah, it was crazy. And I have this weekend kind of theoretically off, although I have a ton of writing and stuff to do, because the next weekend I'll be in Bloomsburg, Pennsylvania for the 4-wheel jamboree. And
cool.
The next weekend is the other Street Machine Nats up in St. Paul, and then the SEMA Gala, and then Speed Week.
Good heavens. That's a lot, but it's a good lot.
It's a great lot.
Yeah, man.
It is a lot, and I'm happy to say that I'm taking you with me through these stories. And
yeah.
Everybody listening, that's the satisfaction I get out is to be able to share this stuff afterwards.
Yeah, that is cool stuff. I would love to see that Jack Roush interview. That'd be, and the Gene Winfield and the Walker Evans. I mean,
yeah,
that is great stuff. So, our friend Rick owns this production business who I kind of technically subcontract for him and SEMA, but he's done like 55 of these Hall of Fame videos now. He's been doing it for years, and Rick is great. He's a brilliant editor, producer, director, and he was relying on me for the car stuff because he doesn't know, he doesn't geek out over all this stuff like I do. He's a car guy, but he's, not quite that deep. But I would, do the interview. These interviews were over an hour long, each of them. Oh, wow.
And Rick's going to use 4 minutes in the show.
Oh, man.
But we would get done, and I would ask Rick, do you have anything else? And then he would jump in looking for that touchy-feely crying moment. And he had a great question. He said, so... like to Roush, he said, so Roush, you mentioned Vic Edelbrock, and you mentioned Ed Iskandarian, and you mentioned Moroso, and all these guys that are in the SEMA Hall of Fame and have chosen you to join them. How does that make you feel?
Oh, man.
And we're all like crying,
Yeah.
So he knows how to put that emotion into these videos, whereas I'm more of the story time guy,
Right.
So I'm really looking forward to seeing what he does with it.
That's killer, man. Absolutely. Man, what a week. Good heavens.
It's a good thing that we're recording this so that later on I can play it back and remember what the hell happened.
Yeah, right, exactly. Oh, yeah, we talked about that, too. Oh, that's fantastic, dude. I tell you what, you're living a lot of people's lives.
I don't take that lightly. I'm just trying to get it all out, for everybody, and not squander these opportunities to hang out with legends and learn something. And instead of, the opposite would be, oh, so then you raced a car. Okay, great. See you later. Oh, this guy raced a car. It's like, no, there's something about those personalities that made them where they are and who they are. Exactly. Yeah. And we need that secret.
Yeah. You're really good at getting that out of people.
Well, I hope so. I'm trying.
Yeah, man. So
I know everybody's wondering what the XL means.
I think they are.
In the Galaxy 500 XL.
But first, they want to know when the first electric starter was on a car.
They don't really want to know that.
They do want to know that. They got to know that.
They don't care.
No, they give a shiza over that. All right. So, of course, I asked you when the first car was that featured an electric starter, and you said a 1914 Cadillac.
Did I? Yeah,
you did, and that was a phenomenal guess. Not quite there, but so close. It was a 1912 Cadillac.
Oh, man alive.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Honest to God, a Cadillac Model 30.
Holy smokes.
Yeah, man.
Sometimes my own BS amazes even me.
And I was reading about that, and apparently, was it Leland who owned Cadillac?
Yeah.
He had a friend who stopped to help somebody whose car was stalled. It was a woman, and he was cranking her car and must have got a kickback, and the crank handle hit this guy in the jaw and killed him.
Oh!
And it affected Leland so much, he says, we are going to develop an electric starter. And Kettering, you're going to do it.
We'll have none of that.
Yeah, exactly. And that's how that was the genesis of that.
That is great.
Yeah,
I mean, it sucks, but it's
a great story, yeah.
Yeah, it is. Wow. Boy, part of this trip, so it was about a 2-hour drive to go from Ontario, California up to Mojave. And I sent you that picture. We're right outside Edwards Air Force Base.
Yes.
And if I had time, I think that's where that museum is, where the lifting body is. And
yeah.
Yeah. Next time I go back to Gene's, I'll stop in and we'll have to go together.
You do that. Shut up.
You could do it. Hell, Grady and I were just talking, about maybe driving the Galaxy to Bonneville.
Yes. Ooh, God dang it. That's got to happen.
I don't know if that's going to happen.
It's got to happen.
1,454 miles each way, plus probably 250 there. That's a lot of no AC out in the desert. It would probably make it, but anyway, where I was going with this is on my drive, I was listening to, I guess it's a podcast. It was a radio show called In the Studio with Redbeard.
Okay.
Redbeard was this, I think, Austin, Texas-based DJ, FM radio personality that interviews a lot of bands and whatnot. And he interviewed Sammy Hagar. And Hagar, big car guy. Of course,
Sure.
I can't drive 55 and Trans Am and a lot of exotic cars, his collection, everything else. But after, I guess before he got into Van Halen, Sammy Hagar's solo career was really blowing up, and he was doing really well. And he did a show in Texas that had like 750 people show up.
Oh.
The night before, he played for 75,000.
Holy cats.
And Redbeard says, well, what do you do? And he says, well, I tell you what you do. You give these people the best show they've ever seen.
Yes.
He said, you play like there's 175,000 people there. And you make everybody happier than hell that they bought that ticket. Because if you come back to town, they're all going to tell their friends and they're all going to come back.
Yes.
So that's what I'm trying to do with these trivia questions, is give you the
Is that where this was going?
Give me the 75,000 crowd.
God bless America.
There's also
All
Steve
that for a stinking trivia question?
Steve Martin had a line too, where he would ask the audience, "Did you guys pay $6 for the show, or was this the $4 show? Was it the $6 show or the $4 show? This is the $6 show. This is the $4 show. All right, I'll give you the $6 show."
Nice.
All right, what does XL stand for in Galaxy 500 XL? You said extra large. Nah. Extra luxury. You got the extra part right.
If that ain't it, it should be.
Yeah, well, in 1962, the Ford advertising campaign called these cars the lively ones. And the XL was extra lively.
Extra lively. I like extra luxury better. Oh man, extra lively. I almost said it doesn't stand for anything. You're oasting me with this question.
Nope, that had a real thing. I mean, so 62, the hot one was the 406 3-deuce 4-speed car, and that 405 horsepower, and that was extra lively.
That is lively,
than the rest,
yeah.
So it wasn't too far off the mark. So.
What was the if you ordered an XL? Did it come? Was there a base engine it came with? Was it like a 390 or?
No, I think the XL base engine was a V8. I think you get a 292 Y block.
Oh, okay.
But it was really buckets, console,
all right,
side trim, a steering wheel, door panels maybe. So it's more of an appearance package.
Okay.
It added extra luxury.
God, dude. Why do you hate me?
But in typical fashion, you could get the 406 4-speed in a base Galaxy with no trim and.
Oh, I got you. Okay, like a stripper
seats,
for the strip.
Yes. Yeah. There you go.
Well, cool.
That's it, man. Well, this was a lot. So
this was a lot. That was a lot to unpack, and you unpacked it well.
Yeah, there's more to unpack there, but
Yeah.
we'll get to more of that eventually, I'm sure. And then this week we launched another Bonneville podcast today, as a matter of fact.
Yeah, I didn't get to listen to that yet, but I will.
Yeah, that's with Aaron Brown and the guys from the Garage Shop down in North Carolina who basically rebuild NASCAR like Aero Warrior wing cars, Talladegas, and run them on assault.
That's cool.
Oh, super cool.
Well,
yeah.
I saw your Facebook post about that, and it was kind of neat because I also saw a response from Scott Clark. He says, "Oh yeah, I know these guys. They're great. They're awesome." I'm like, "This is pretty cool." And it's almost like a self-powering thing when you got these past guests that are, commenting on what you're putting out there.
Well, it's a pretty small community.
Yeah.
Of the people that do it, but I don't know, maybe it'll grow. But I think I'd sent you the text looking at the areas of motorsport that I was able to get involved with this week alone.
Right.
Was the car shows, the pro street stuff, early lake bed racing, Bonneville racing, NASCAR, off-road truck racing. Basically any form of motorsport in this country, I got to talk to somebody this week about it.
That's killer, man. That is crazy. I love that.
Yeah, super lucky.
Mm-hmm.
Just having a good time.
Good stuff, Maynard.
All right. Well, if you enjoyed this show and you made it this far, we appreciate it. You can click that subscribe button, and another one of these episodes will magically appear right stuck in your device, just right in there. And you don't really have to do anything. So click that subscribe button, and that's pretty much all I got, my friend.
That's all I got, man. That's a heck of a lot.
It was a heck of a lot. So for Mr. Mark Q-Ball Clark, I'm Kevin Ostie, reminding you to start with the slowest thing and make it faster on VA Radio.